The dust storm rolled across the open plains like a giant, angry beast, swallowing the sun and turning the world into a blur of brown and gray. Luke Carson tightened the bandana over his face as he pushed his horse deeper into the chaos, heart pounding with a fear he hadn't felt in years. He had seen storms before, but nothing like this one. Somewhere out there, a mail-order bride was traveling to the nearest depot, and if she was caught in this, she wouldn't stand a chance. The thought tightened around his chest like a rope, pulling him forward. Every few seconds Luke heard the distant cry of a wagon wheel or a muffled scream carried by the wind, but he couldn't be sure what was real. His mind was replaying old ghosts, memories of the sister he failed to save when he was a boy, lost in a storm like this. Not again, he whispered into the darkness. His hands shook as he urged his horse faster. He'd only planned to pick up supplies today, but fate had other plans, and the storm felt like a reckoning he could not ignore. Through the swirling haze, he finally spotted a silhouette, a woman stumbling beside an overturned wagon, her dress torn by the violent wind. She clutched a small trunk to her chest, using it as a shield as the storm tried to tear her away. Her hair whipped wildly behind her, and fear radiated from every trembling movement. Luke's breath caught. She looked impossibly fragile against the fury of nature, like a candle about to be snuffed out. "Hold on," he yelled into the storm. The woman dropped to her knees, unable to stand against the storm's force. Luke leapt from his horse, boots sinking into shifting sand beneath him. He reached her just as she collapsed fully, shielding her with his body while the wind clawed at them. She was shaking not only from fear but from exhaustion. When she lifted her face, he saw eyes full of tears and desperation. "I can't see," she whispered. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, determined not to lose her. He guided her toward his horse, using his body as a barrier, each step a battle against an invisible army. She coughed violently, dust choking her lungs. Luke pulled her closer, murmuring reassurances he wasn't sure she could hear. When they reached the saddle, she clung to him with surprising strength, fingers digging into his coat. "You're safe now," he said, even as the storm still roared. Somehow he believed those words. Saving her felt like saving himself. With the woman secured in front of him, Luke kicked the horse into motion. The animal fought its way through the storm, each stride heavy and uncertain. The woman leaned back against him, trembling, and he felt every shiver. Her presence stirred emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years: fear for another, protectiveness, responsibility. He didn't know her name, yet losing her felt unthinkable. The storm raged on, but Luke pressed forward with sheer will. At last, the outline of an abandoned line shack appeared through the dust. Luke guided the horse toward it, nearly collapsing with relief. He carried the woman inside and kicked the door shut behind them. The sudden stillness made his ears ring. She crumpled onto a cot, gasping for air. Luke quickly wet a cloth and wiped the dirt from her face. Her features emerged, delicate, pale, but strong beneath exhaustion. When she opened her eyes, gratitude flickered there. "I thought I was going to die," she whispered. Luke knelt beside her and offered water. "You almost did," he said gently. "But you're safe now." She looked at him as if trying to anchor herself. "My name is Clara Whitmore," she said, voice steadier. "I was on my way to marry a rancher in Castle Ridge." Luke froze. A mail-order bride with a future already written. Clara noticed his pause and lowered her gaze. "I know how it sounds," she murmured. "But my life back east, it wasn't safe anymore. I needed a new beginning." Luke understood more than she knew. Running from the past was something he knew far too well. "You did what you had to," he said softly. She smiled weakly, and something warm stirred inside him. She looked scared, tired, but undeniably brave. As the storm howled outside, Clara shared bits of her life. She spoke of losing her mother, of debts piling up, of a cruel uncle who controlled every breath she took. "Coming here was my only escape," she said. Luke's jaw tightened with anger on her behalf. No woman should have to run for her life. Yet Clara had. And now she sat before him, alone, vulnerable, and incredibly strong. Luke checked her for injuries, his hands gentle and respectful. Clara didn't pull away. Instead, she watched him with quiet trust. "You're a kind man," she said softly. Luke swallowed. No one had called him that in years. "I'm just doing what anyone should," he replied, but she shook her head. Not everyone would ride into a storm for a stranger. Her words struck deeper than she realized. The hours passed slowly, the storm refusing to weaken. Clara shivered beneath the thin blanket. Luke stoked a small fire, trying not to think about how close she'd come to dying. When he looked back, her eyes were closed but her breathing uneven. He sat beside her, keeping guard. Protecting her felt like a responsibility he didn't want to let go. When Clara woke, she looked disoriented before recognition softened her face. "You stayed," she whispered. "I wasn't going to leave you alone," he said. She swallowed, emotion gathering in her eyes. He offered her dried biscuits, and she smiled. "I've had worse," she joked softly. The heaviness in the air loosened a little. Luke asked gently what kind of man she was supposed to marry. Clara looked down. Someone older. A widower needing help with his ranch. Our letters were brief. Luke felt something tighten inside him. She deserved more than a life built on necessity, more than becoming someone's convenience. The storm weakened, but inside the shack, a different tension grew. Clara hesitated. "Will you take me to him when this ends?" Luke opened his mouth but the word stuck. The thought of delivering her to another man filled him with a strange ache. "We'll see," he murmured. Clara sensed the shift but didn't question it. Night brought a deep cold that seeped through the shack's walls. Luke gave Clara his coat. She protested weakly, but he insisted. When she wrapped it around herself, she closed her eyes as if absorbing its warmth. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "Not yet," he replied. "But I'd like to." Her eyes opened in surprise. Clara spoke of dreams, peace, a small garden, a life without fear. Luke listened, imagining her in a gentler world. He found himself wanting to protect those dreams. Wanting to give her safety. It was foolish, he told himself, but the bond between them was growing. As the fire crackled, Clara winced and Luke gently lifted her sleeve to reveal a fresh bruise. She pulled back, but he caught her hand softly. "Who did this?" he asked. She looked away. "My uncle. He tried to stop me from leaving." Luke's blood boiled, fury shaking his hands. He forced his anger down. "You're safe from him now," he said firmly. Clara nodded, though uncertainty clouded her eyes. "I hope so," she whispered. "As long as I'm breathing, he won't touch you again." The promise came from deep inside him. Clara looked at him with a softness that made his heart stumble. "Why would you care so much?" Luke struggled. "Because no one cared enough for my sister," he said quietly. Clara's expression softened. "I'm sorry. Maybe saving you is the closest thing to forgiving myself," he murmured. Her fingers brushed his wrist gently. They talked late into the night, stories weaving between them. Clara laughed softly at one point, a fragile, beautiful sound. Luke found himself smiling. The weight in the room lifted, replaced by something warm and tender. The storm outside faded away. When Clara fell asleep again, Luke watched the gentle rise and fall of her breaths. She looked peaceful, finally. He brushed a curl from her forehead, hesitating before touching her skin. The warmth lingered on his fingertips, impossible to ignore. The night grew colder. Luke added wood to the fire and leaned back, exhausted but refusing to sleep. Not while she was vulnerable. Protecting Clara felt as natural as breathing. He didn't understand why, but he didn't question it. Before dawn, Clara stirred. "You didn't rest?" she asked softly. Luke shrugged. "I'm fine." She frowned, guilt flashing across her face. "You shouldn't exhaust yourself for me." He gave her a soft smile. "Maybe I wanted to." Her cheeks flushed faintly. Soft morning light spilled through the cracks. Clara sat up, brushing dust from her hair. "What happens now?" she asked. "We head to town," Luke said. "From there, we'll decide." Clara repeated the word quietly. "We." Luke nodded slowly. "If you want." Clara looked down at his coat in her hands. "No one's ever included me in anything before," she said, voice trembling. Luke felt something twist inside him. "You're included now." Her eyes shimmered. "Thank you." Warmth bloomed between them. When they stepped outside, the world was clean and calm. Clara shielded her eyes from the rising sun. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Luke looked at her instead of the sky. "Yeah," he murmured. "It is." She blushed softly. As they prepared to leave, Clara touched his arm. "If you hadn't found me," her voice cracked. Luke turned to her. "But I did," he said gently. "And I'm not going anywhere." Clara swallowed hard. She didn't know what fate had planned, but being saved by Luke felt like destiny's first breath.